Hi guys, I'm Anurag and today we'll be discussing about the very basics of a case interview. It basically involve a brief discussion on the structure of a case interview, the tips, and the judgment criteria that is generally followed in a case interview. Alright, so let's get started. The first thing that we're going to discuss is the structure of a case interview. So typically, a typical interview can be broken down into three major sections. Number one is the HR and the number one is the introduction and the HR questions. Number two is the business case, and number three is the feedback and conclusion. So the first one, as the name suggests, introduction and HR question. This would cover. This would start off probably with you and the interviewer exchanging pleasantries, and then you going on with your introduction and some basic HR questions like why you for this particular company, why this profile, why this company, your strengths, weaknesses, your future plans, so on and so forth. This would also involve any question that the interviewer might have from your CV. And this particular part of the interview, so to say, would go on for around 5 to 10 to 15 minutes at max in a typical interview. And this is something that you should be prepared for beforehand, before you sit for the interview. This should also form a major part of your preparation for the interview. The second part is the business case, something that that is considered the most important part, and that apparently is also in a case interview. So the business case is basically when the interviewer would give you a problem statement that you would have to solve. This problem statement now can either be hypothetical or it can be a real life problem statement that the company that the interviewer has been working on from before, has worked on priorly, or kind of the company that you're setting for is working on, so to say, on a broader level. So this is something that again you should be preparing for, or you should be preparing for from before, for like a couple of weeks. But this would be something that you cannot prepare all of it, because there is always a different case, always a different example, and always a different question problem statement in front of you. This would again typically last for around 20 to 25 minutes, might also stretch to around 30 minutes, depends upon the case, the approach that you're taking, the solution, as well as the availability of the availability of the interviewer as well. The third part is feedback and conclusion, as the name suggests again. This is basically the part where you'll ask for any feedback, inputs, and any suggestions that the interview might have for you with regards to everything that's happened before in the interview. Plus, this is also kind of this is also the part where the interview is concluded. So you can, if not on any of these questions, you can, if not any of these inputs that you want from the interview, you can probably ask the interviewer some questions like, what all experience has she, or they have had during their tenure at the firm, basically, or kind of any other questions, so to say. This is also the part where some interviewers also like to strike a conversation with the interviewer and ask them about their experiences and so on and so forth. This would again go on for around 5 to 10 minutes. So on a broader level, in very general context, and a typical interview would last for around 30 to 40 to 45 minutes at max. But this obviously depends on a lot more factors. So yes, I hope that's clear. And then let's move on to the next slide. Sure. All right. So this is basically about the very basic tips that you can follow while that you can keep in mind while you're sitting for the case interview. And while I kind of talk to you about all of these tips, imagine yourself being a consultant sitting in front of the client, and that is how kind of I guess if you would kind of imagine yourself being this way, you'll be able to understand all of these tips in a very better and a much more effective way. So the first step is be confident and precise. All right. So confidence and precision basically are the two most important things, be it in a case interview or be it anywhere else in your life. But when it comes to communication, confidence is a really important thing, so to say. So being confident is something that will take you a long way. Why particularly in the case interview? Because if you're consulting, you have to sit in front of the top most leadership management of the particular company of your client, which is why you have to be really confident in whatever you're saying, or else they won't, or the client won't kind of put in so much of belief or so much of trust in you. So that is why being confident is really important. Being precise again, because the client probably would always be running short on time. You would always be running short on time, which is why it's very important for you to kind of stick to the point. Just explain everything that you have to say, but in a very precise manner. You don't have to kind of over explain things, which is generally a habit of most of the people that I have interacted with. But just make sure that you stick to the point and try to kind of convey and communicate everything that you want to in a very precise and a confident manner. The second thing is take time. So in a case interview, and even in front of you, the client, you'll be probably be asked questions, or you'll probably be given a case that you in an industry or in a sector or a case, so to say, that you would not be familiar with from before. Which is why it's very important for you to understand all of it. Which is why it's very important for you to kind of take your time to understand what are you being asked to do, what is kind of the background of the case, the background of the problem, and what is it exactly that you have to do. And again, one most important question that kind of comes up here is that how much time is um, kind of long enough, how much time is short enough, what is kind of the right proportion of the time that you should take. So the one best way to kind of judge it is again taking a very simple approach. So let's say that you're taking 30 seconds of your time with the interviewer, or a 30-second break for you to do whatever kind of thing that you want to do, and then you're coming up with a response, obviously. So the proportion, kind of the length of the time, the amount of time that you're taking should be proportional to the output, or to the result, or to the response that you're coming up with next once you are done with taking time. So I guess that is kind of the best suited way that you can take to measure if the time that you're taking is good enough or not. It's short, it's too long, you're taking too much time, you're taking too less of time, and then not coming up with a proper answer. So it's better for you to kind of take in time, but just make sure that whatever time that you're taking, it is proportionate to the output that you're giving back once you are done taking the time. Third thing is speaking points. So of course, very generally, again, not just in a case interview, it's very important for anyone. It's very much easier and convenient for the person who's communicating, as well as for the person who is kind of being talked to, who's listening, to understand whatever kind of the matter is, whatever the main objective of the conversation is. If the conversation is being done, if you're speaking in points, if you're the communication is being done, even written or verbally in points. So again, that is one of the most important things, particularly why? Because if let's say I'm a consultant, I'm sitting in front of the client, and then the client asks me, why should we do this? And then I kind of go on and tell the whole story in paragraphs and long sentences, so on and so forth, that this is why you should do this. Instead, imagine a situation where I'm like, all right, so basically this is what we're going to talk about, and these are the three reasons that kind of we should talk about and we should focus on: number one, number two, number three, and then I'll go on and explain all each of these three reasons in one particular line. So of course, the second kind of way looks very much better than the first way, in which kind of I go on and explain things in a manner that might not be convenient for the other person to understand, as well as for me to kind of make it say it and express it in a way that's easier for the other person to understand. So speaking points. Coming on to the fourth one, it's structure your thoughts. So structure is something that you're gonna if that you will get to hear time and time again if you're preparing for a case interview by everyone, so to say. Why is it very important to structure your thoughts well, to take a structured approach? Is because in a consulting interview or in a problem statement, when you're solving a problem statement, or even in general, there would not be one right answer. Your focus and the interview's focus would always be more on the approach and the way that you're solving that particular problem statement, the way that you the way that you're approaching that particular question, not just a problem statement, so to say, instead of the final approach, or instead of the final answer, or the final number, so to say, if you're doing guesstimate. Which is that it's very important for you to have the right approach, right? And to have the right approach, it's very important, it's imperative for you to structure your thoughts well. And even just one tip that I have here again is, even when you're kind of noting stuff down, just make sure that you're noting it in a very neat and clean manner, so that it's easier for you to refer it back whenever you want to in the middle of the case interview. It's very important for you to structure your thoughts well, structure it in a way that's easier for you to again understand, and it's easier for you to make the other person understand as well. And the approach again is basically your structure is would basically be the backbone of your approach, and which would ultimately kind of um, which would ultimately affect the case a lot. So again, structuring your thoughts well, structuring your approach well is a major part of whatever you'll be doing in the business case interview. The fifth one is ask questions. So again, as I already mentioned, you'll probably be given a case statement or a problem in an industry that you might not be aware of, or even if you're familiar with the industry, the problem statement, the exact client is something that you can not be aware of fully. Which is why it's very important for you to understand what the problem statement is talking about, what exactly is it that you have to do. which is why again it's very important for you to ask questions, because the only way that you're going to know that is by you asking the question to the interviewer. Making assumptions and then not clarifying it with the interviewer is the worst mistake that you can make in a case interview, because you always need to make sure that you and the interviewer are on the same page with respect to everything. Again, as I already mentioned, imagine yourself being in a room, being in a conference room, as a consultant in front of a client, and then let's say the client asks you that what should we do next, or what is it that we kind of are looking forward to, so on and so forth, and any question, so to say. But then, if you would not be asking the right questions, if you would not be having the proper information, then whatever information you would be giving, it would be with negligible, minimum, even half knowledge, so to say, which would be kind of no good use, so to say, to the client. So it's very important for you to ask questions, ask the right questions at the right time. Um, the sixth one is taking notes and keep summarizing. All right. So again, going on with a similar flow here. So it's very important, as I already mentioned, for you and the interview to be on the same page, because there'll be a lot of discussion during the case interview, which is why it's very important again for you to kind of keep taking notes of whatever relevant information the person sitting on the other side of the table uh, is giving you. Let's say that the person says that, and let's say that the person kind of gives you a problem statement, and since then you're asking questions, it's very important for you to also note down whatever the interviewer is saying, so that you have all of the points of information with you, so that you could use them to refer them back in your case in the beginning and toward the end of the case, and you can basically have a you can kind of know it as much as you can about the case, and you do not forget anything. So very important for you to keep taking notes, plus summarizing it. Again, as I already mentioned, it's very important for you and the interviewer to be on the same page, which is why after every few minutes, make sure that you're summarizing whatever you've done until now. So if there's anything that you might have missed, or if there's anything that the interview might have missed during the case interview, then it is clear as soon as possible. The last one here is cover all the key points. So again, if you're taking notes, in most cases, or in certain cases, so to say, there will also be a situation where you will be fed up with some kind of irrelevant information, or information that is not as material to you as some of the other points are. So it's very important for you to distinguish what is important, what is relevant, what is material to what is not, which is why whenever you're kind of taking notes and summarizing, it's very important for you to cover all the necessary points, so that the interview not does not feel that you have missed out on something very important. Again, imagine all of these steps in a room, as yourself. Imagine yourself being a consultant sitting in the room in front of a client. If you'll go back to all of these steps, you'll actually realize how important is it for you to kind of follow them and to keep them in mind. I hope these are all clear, and then let's just move on to the judgment criteria. All right, so talking about the judgment criteria, this is not an exhaustive list, but again, I think that this covers most part of it. So basically, there are five criteria that you will be judged upon in a case interview. Number one is the cultural fit. So this cultural fit basically involves how would you be able to gel in with the company, and how the company and the employees would be able to kind of fit in with you as well. So this would probably be cleared majorly from your introduction, from your HR, and from your CV, and from your background, but something that is kind of judged upon, evaluated all throughout the duration of the interview. So this would involve if you and the company shares a common value, shares a common belief, so on and so forth. So as to just make sure that you are the right fit for the company, irrespective of whatever your problem solving and your acumen is. As a person, you are the right fit for the company, and as a company and the environment and the employees of the company are the right fit, or would provide an environment to you that is conducive for your growth. So that is all about the cultural fit. Um, then comes the solving. So problem solving again is a very important part on is a very important criterion that you will be judged upon. This would again be something that you would be judged while you're solving the business case. Um, so why is problem solving important? Because again, as I already mentioned, it's not it's not the answer. It's not kind of you would not in most cases you would not get an objective answer to whatever the question would be, which is why it's very important for you to understand the way in which you're solving the problem. So problem solving skills, both in terms of your aptitude, your quantitative skills, as well as the skills as well, business acumen, as I already mentioned in the last part, would be kind of judged very thoroughly by the interviewer. The third part is again structure. As I already mentioned, your end result, your end answer is not something that you'll be evaluated on as much as you'll be evaluated on your problem solving skills or the structure, the way in which you're kind of reaching the answer. You're trying to reach the answer because that is all about or that is kind of majorly what you will be doing as a consultant. You will be given a case, you will be given a case in a completely different industry, in a completely with a completely different client, so you cannot know it all, which is why it's very important for you to take the right path to know it all, basically, to know as much as you can about that in that particular situation. So structure is the third thing. Then fourth is communication. Again, there's no need for me to kind of stress upon this fact that communication is also one of the most important criteria that we have in a case interview. Because again, if you're sitting in front of the client, communication is something that would definitely kind of would definitely kind of catch the attention of the other person, again, which is why communication is also an important part, and it is imperative for you to be a good communicator. And now communication does not only mean that you're communicating and then you're talking, basically it also listening also be kind of forms a part of the communication at a broader level, which is why it's very important for you to talk properly, as well as it is very important for you to kind of listen to whatever the other person is saying properly, so that the conversation that is happening is useful, it's not irrelevant, and you and the person on the other side of the table, being the interviewer or the client, are on the same page. And last one is the business acumen. Again, this is something that you would kind of judge upon all throughout your case or throughout your interview, so to say. Now, why business acumen? Because you will be solving cases for business. You'll be solving the problems for business to help them improve their performances. This is essentially what consulting is, which is why it's very important for you to have the very basics, for you to know the very basics of business. You can't say that if let's say cost goes up, or if let's say the revenue goes down, then the profit goes up. It's obviously a very different scenario altogether in most cases. Which is why it's very important for you to know the very basics of how business and how business is operated. um, and it's not very kind of required, or it's not very much asked of you, expected of you, to know the very deep intricacies, nitty-gritties of the particular industry, of the particular sector, except for the one that you've already worked for. So if let's say I'm someone who has worked in, let's say, the education sector, so I should know a little bit more about education than I would be knowing about every other sector, so to say, on a very general level. So again, business acumen is very important for you to. It is much expected for you to kind of know the very basics of how business runs, the basic equations, basic formulas, so to say, and know the very basics of all the industries in general, but know a little bit better about the industry that you have worked in. You have prior work experiences, be it in terms of your college subjects, let's say, or your internships, or any life projects that you've done, or any actual work experience that you've had while doing a job. So these are the five factors that I feel kind of forms the majority of the judgment criteria. And so, yes, this is all that I have for now. Stay tuned for upcoming videos. Thanks a lot for joining. Bye.